Right.
Okay, so hello friends. Today I have for our last session saved the very best for you, most special Calvert Markham. I have often spoken about his book, The Top Consultant, and he's got many other books also to his credit in the field of consulting. One latest book is Mastering Management Consulting, and there's another one called The Art of Consultancy. So he's a famous author in the world of management consulting, and he's a thought leader, and he's a good friend as well at the same time. So I'll tell you all about his biodata in my PowerPoint presentation after this interview is over. We have an audience, Calvert, of people, all of whom who wish to take the plunge to set up their consulting businesses. Most of them wish to grow their businesses and be successful and profitable. There are many unknown challenges that lie ahead, and that's the reason why we'd love to ask you a few questions. So Calvert, I'd love to have you say hi to our participants.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here and a delight. It's lovely to be talking to people in India, a place I've visited on many occasions, and indeed have recently met, a few years ago, met you, Aneeta, in Mumbai, although we spent a lot of time together in other countries as well. I'm also very pleased to be spending some time talking to these aspiring consultants that you have on your program.
Excellent. We've had many good years working together as well. And Calvert, I do know, and I have witnessed as well, that you have trained hundreds, maybe thousands of consultants all across the globe, and even visited and interacted with many from India as well. So you're familiar with our country. There are many great competencies you would have encountered in different countries and many admirable achievements of many consultants. However, if I was to ask you, what is the Achilles heel of a typical consultant? What is that weak point where consultants need to work to achieve their fullest potential? And if there was one, then what would that be according to you?
Yes, well, I think the first thing is, and you've shared with me some of the other things you've covered in this program, and I think the point will have been made that consulting is more than just simply a contractual relationship. Sometimes you famously hear of somebody who leaves their business, their employer on a Friday, and they return the following Monday as a consultant. And the term consultant itself can mean so many different things. And at its weakest, then it's simply referring to a contractual relationship. So in other words, you're not an employee, you're a consultant. But of course, one of the things that will have come across in this particular program is the fact that there are professional skills involved in consultancy, not just having a body of knowledge and skill, but there is actually a professionalism and a set of competencies that you require in order to be able to be a consultant. So the starting point, I would say, is to recognize that actually there are, just because you happen to have a body of knowledge or skill, that there is a set of competencies that enable you to perform the job of a consultant well and to deliver great quality service to your clients. Really those skills, I would say, fall into three areas. And of course, those people watching this particular interview may well have these skills, but it's important to recognize what those skills are. And very briefly, they can be put into three main areas. One is dealing with problems, and that'll probably be fairly familiar territory with those who are delivering consultancy in areas of their own specialist technical competence. The second thing is dealing with projects, because consultancy is around dealing with discontinuity. And so you're not acting as an interim executive, you're there usually to deliver some sort of change. And therefore, the way that change is mediated is through a project. And therefore, you do need some skills of project management. And when you're a management consultant, particularly if you're running your own business, then actually, of course, that has a real commercial impact, because the fees that you charge are there to cover the cost of your time. And if actually you spend more time than you've budgeted, or you need to spend more time than you've budgeted on a project, then of course that's going to result in some form of loss. And so you do need to actually be very good at project management, and indeed going alongside that, of course, is managing risk, looking at the probability of being able to deliver whatever you've promised within the times constraints that you've set. And the third area, so dealing with problems, dealing with projects, is dealing with clients and actually being able to work well with your clients and having some skills in engaging with them. And again, that's a proper skill set. So those are some general observations about the transition of being somebody who's a technical specialist or expert and then becoming a consultant. So recognizing that actually there's a body of knowledge and a set of skills that will help you perform the job of consultant, both in terms of delivering good quality service and running a profitable firm well. But Aneeta, I can go on and say some more about some specific issues, if you like, about pitfalls. Would you like me to go on and talk about those?
Yeah, I wanted to know where the Achilles heel is, because there are great consultants and there are not so great consultants, and many great human beings don't make it as big as they ought to have made it. So I just wanted to know, where is that one weak point where consultants need to, plug the leak, so to say. So you have observed so many. So what is the weakest link in the chain?
Not listening. Not listening, I think, is the big thing. I mean, one of the great pitfalls, particularly if you're a great expert, is that you shape the client's issues to your own expertise. And I can tell a story against myself about this, because I remember I was going to go and see a client, and it was an exploratory meeting with this particular client. And the aim of the meeting really was for him to share all the issues that they had. This is with a global corporation, so he's quite senior in a global corporation, for him to start sharing his issues. And to that end, I'd prepared a little presentation that I thought, well, I'll go through this with him, and that will encourage him to talk. But then what happened was he completely opened up to me. We had a very full conversation, but in my bag, I had my presentation, which I put a lot of time into preparing. And I thought, well, actually, I don't want to waste this presentation. I will, I'm going to make sure he watches this. He's going to have to see this presentation. And so I got it out of my bag, and he said, no, I don't want to see your presentation. And of course, he was quite right, because we'd moved beyond the point where that presentation was going to be of any use in terms of opening up the conversation. So the point about that is that it's about listening and responding to the situation as it emerges. And one of the great risks, of course, as I say, if you're a deep specialist, is that to a person with a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. And so what you have to do is actually listen very, very carefully to what the client is saying and what colleagues are saying. If you're working in a firm or with associates, listen to them very, very carefully. And I can think about the occasions where I performed badly, and I think on every single one of those occasions, it's because I didn't listen. So I think that would be one of the key skills. And it's not a great skill, but it's a great human skill, I think.
I remember the days when I was also very naive. I took my pre-packaged, box of solutions to a client, and it turned out the situation evolved very differently. And you just have to abandon what you went prepared with at times and just go with the flow. So excellent. So moving on, I after having been in the world of consulting for so many years, I see an increasing trend. And the trend is towards the emergence of a mass market for consulting skills. And this is typically hallmarked by, undifferentiated services. So I'm a coach, somebody else is a coach, and we all have similar competencies. I have low brand values. No longer do the big names of the big 5 companies attract that kind of glamour as they used to. Knowledge is becoming increasingly commoditized and available, at the press of a button on Google. borderline ethics. We've seen that so many cases of fraud in consulting services, and also very competitive pricing wars. People are quoting lesser and lesser for the same work. So do you think that this emergence of this mass market, and commoditization of consulting, you think that this is the cusp of a change? Do you think things are going to change from here, and when things settle down, there will be a different world order for the consulting industry? And if there will be, then what would that look like?
Yes. Well, I might refer you to a seminal article in Harvard Business Review written by Clayton Christensen in 2013, quite a long time ago, where he talked exactly about this topic, and it may well be on your reading list, I don't know. But that's about disruption in the world of consulting. My view is this, that there, long time ago, there's a strategic model which looks at three areas of supreme competence that you need. One is client intimacy, a second one is technical leadership, and the third one is cost leadership. And you really need to be very clear which space that you're going to be excellent in. Is it because you actually have technology that's in advance of anything else anyone else has? Do you actually have a number of great relationships with individuals in organizations where in the jargon you're a trusted advisor? Or is it that actually you're able to do things in a way that actually you've got processes and abilities and experience? If you take the experience curve, for example, you've done it so often that the cost of doing something is far less. And one of the little phrases that I was taught very early in consulting was, when all other things are equal, price will be the determinant of who gets picked, who gets selected for doing a piece of work. So please make sure that all other things are not equal. And so the question is what is your differentiator? And of course, I mean, I've run my own business as well. I've run a business, and so I've been a buyer of consultancy. And one of the things that's happened over the years that I've been in business is a transition in the make or buy decision. And when I started working for a large global corporation at the beginning of my career, a lot of work was insourced. And of course, what's happened over the period since then, it's become outsourced. And so if you're taking the strategic make or buy decision, then people are moving to buy from make. And so as a business owner or a business manager, then actually I don't have all that spare time. I don't have all that capacity. And I don't necessarily have the capacity within the people who are working for me to take on the work required for an additional project. In other words, they're not sitting around waiting for something to do. And therefore, in many ways, whenever you have a change project that's introduced into any organization, then you don't have the capacity to be able to deliver that yourself. And so what happens then is you have to bring in outsiders, you have to outsource it. So I don't see any change in that. I see that people will still need to be brought in to deal with projects which are about change. I think then when it comes to thinking about your own business, you need to be very clear about what space you're going to be in. And I think particularly if you're thinking about being a sole practitioner as a management consultant, then you have to create your own ecology of clients around you. In other words, people with whom you have a great relationship and who you're cultivating. In the sales terms, you're a farmer. In other words, you've got your territory and you're developing business from that group of clients and getting repeat business from them or referrals from them all the time. So I think that would be one of the areas I look at. The other thing I think it is also about investing in yourself. For consultants, then of course, time is their stock in trade. Time is something that passes and will never be recovered. And so managing time is one of the crucial things to do when you're running your own consultancy. And I think there are a number of mistakes to be made here. You asked me earlier, Aneeta, about some pitfalls for consultants. And I think one of the things I would say from a commercial point of view is thinking very carefully about how you spend your time. And for example, if you're very busy and you're investing all your time in delivering services for clients, then there's a great risk you end up with a sort of feast or famine model. In other words, you're spending all your time working for clients and you're not investing any time in personal, product, or sales development. And the other thing, of course, is that it's very easy actually to spend a lot of time on non-fee earning work. And that needs to be managed as well as you do your fee earning work as well. So managing time is absolutely crucial. And part of that investment of time should be in thinking of keeping yourself up to date, managing your network, and making sure then that you're actually getting a good return on investment for that time. One of the crucial things I think to measure in looking at your consulting performance is utilization. So in other words, look at the number of days you've got per year, which 52 weeks times 5 days is 260 days a year. The question is, how many of those days would you be earning fees? And it's certainly not going to be all those days because you're going to be taking some holiday and you ought to be doing some continuing professional development. You need to be investing some time in sales, and not all your sales efforts going to be rewarded with a sale. You're going to have to be involved in marketing. You have to be involved in product development. You need to be involved in networking. And so typically in a management consultancy, that ratio is about, say, around 60% for, on average for a consultant. But when you get to being a sole practitioner, it might be rather less. So in other words, the number of days that you're earning fees in your own practice out of the 260 might only be about 140, 130. And you need to be making your budgets on that basis. So coming back to this question of commoditization and so on, the question is, what is differentiating you? What is your sweet spot, as it were, for your work? And the other thing I would say also is concentrating. It's about focus. One of the things that, if you're setting up your own practice, is you have to focus. If you're working for a firm of consultants, then quite often you get invited to do work, which, if I can put it generously, is at the periphery of your expertise. And it may be new stuff to you, but it gives you that opportunity whilst you're working under the umbrella of a big consulting practice to work alongside other people who can train you and make sure that you're doing the thing right. If you're a sole practitioner, then you have to stick to what you're good at and be very clear about what that is. I mean, there may be occasions where you want to take on new work, in which case you have to allow more time, more effort for doing it. But focus, I think, is very important.
Wonderful. There's a lot of wisdom in what you just shared, and it's absolutely amazing. So one small question just before we go, and that is, our audience is all starting, people who want to start their consulting business. A couple of them already have. So what are some of the tips that you would like to give them that would help them approach their professional practice and business in a better manner, as compared to someone who's not been trained in the consulting skills?
I think the first thing I suggest is find a mentor. So I remember when I started my own business, in fact, I was starting at much the same time as a friend was starting his. And we used to meet once a month over a cup of tea to talk about what was going on in our business. And it was essentially co-counseling. And if you're running your own business, you do need someone to talk to about it, to act as a sounding board, to sound out your ideas, and perhaps to be a critical friend as well. I think that would be the first thing. There is, of course, the Institute of Management Consultants in India as well, which provides an opportunity to get together with fellow consultants and talk to them and to talk shop. Or if there's a local group that you can join, that's also quite useful. I think that would be one of the first things I would say, is finding some people to talk to. The second thing, I think, coming back to this question of time, is creating boundaries in your time. Because if you're a sole practitioner, if you're a self-employed business person, it's very easy just to spend all your time working. And one of the things I would commend to you is taking holidays. one of the features of a holiday, I know from my own experience, is that in anticipation, you may not feel that you need a holiday, but boy, do you realize you needed a holiday when you get back from it. And so do carve out time for yourself and for your refreshment. And I would guess those would be the main things I'd say. I mean, I noticed also, Aneeta, you said something about ethics as well. And I think it's a question about being true to yourself. It's a good idea to have some operating principles for yourself, how you're going to live your life as a consultant. And one of the things that's quite useful to think about, and you may have covered this in an earlier session, is the idea of what's called core story. In other words, what you want people to infer about you when they talk about your business. What are the images that come to mind? You know, quite often it's called brand, but this is a bit more detailed. So what are the statements that you would like people to make about you and your business? And then you need to then say, well, how is that manifested in the way that I engage with my clients? How does it look on my website? How do my written documents and emails stack up against that set of criteria? Are they actually always reinforcing that particular core story about me and my business? And so, I mean, I think it was Jeff Bezos who said, brand is what people say about you when you go out of the room. And I think there's a lot of truth about this. What do you want people to be saying about you and about your business? Because a reputation is absolutely crucial in the world of management consultancy.
So the core story is an amazing thought that you just shared with us. It's a great tip because when we started this program 10 weeks ago, we started with what is my consulting identity? What is my ikigai? What is it I'm good at? And what is it that I love to do? And what is it the world wants and needs? And what is it I can get paid for? And that corner niche that I'd like to create for myself. And I'm so happy that the participants of this program have begun a journey. And hopefully they'll be able to weave a core story around their offerings when they do start their businesses. And so your thought is amazing. It's not just something to introduce. A core story is not something that you just introduce yourself with. You know, it's something that weaves into everything that you do. So
that's right.
That's right. Beautiful. That's an amazing thought. I just love that. And
good. Can I just share one final thought with your students? Because I know that you're on this course because you're either contemplating or have already started running your own consultancy. And I can remember my own journey into consultancy, which was many, many years ago. And as I mentioned before, I'd been working for a large international corporation. I decided that I'd become a management consultant for 3 or 4 years in order to get the practical equivalent of an MBA. And I'd get a lot of experience of working with different organizations and dealing with their problems and so on. And it was fully my intention when I started, which was to exit after 3 or 4 years and then become a general manager or director of a business. But I actually loved it so much. And I can still remember early in my career, I used to be headhunted to go and do different types of job. And each time the headhunter would then tell me all about the merits of this new executive role that I might fill. And then I would tell him all about the job I was currently doing. And I discovered each time I did this, I was selling myself my own job back. And so I never left consultancy because I really think it's a great, great career. And that's how I've spent my life is being a consultant. So actually to all the students who are contemplating this, do enjoy it. I've had enormous fun with it. I think I've met an enormous number of interesting people, not least of course Aneeta, and it's been great fun. So I do wish all the students extremely good fortune in taking on this role.
So don't lose sight of the joy of consulting. No matter what challenges come your way, every day is a joyful experience. Yes. Thank you so much for that, Calvert. And this is going to be our last session with the students, and I'm sure it couldn't have got better than this. The kind of thoughts that you have shared, it's really something transformational for them. Thank you. On behalf of All India Management Association, the staff, the management, the participants, and myself too, I'd love to say a very warm thank you to you.
Thank you. It'd be a pleasure. Thank you.